Thank you for joining us for this episode of Who Does She Think She Is? Audacious financial journeys with tremendous Black women. I'm Mele Miller, 30-year bank exec that you wish has always been your friend. Who does she think she is? In this episode, I have the privilege, and I don't even know if privilege is the right word, but I get to explore the world of Erika Conner, a savant, an experienced curator in art, media, entertainment, in so many spaces. And Essence celebrates her as the next Hollywood executive to watch. But to be quite frank, Erica's journey is inspiring to me as a mother, as a Black woman leader, as someone who is trying to start something new and be just a little bit different. From producing the podcast series Umi Says and Chatty Cathy to curating the Sunset Strip art walk, she is different. Erika makes waves. I'm going to say that again. Erika makes waves in multiple industries.
Yes.
And I'm not only here for it as a fellow Black woman, I'm here for her. And I am beyond excited to welcome Erika to Who Does She Think She Is? And just to talk to me and spend this time and space together. Erika, thank you for everything.
What a beautiful intro. Thank you and cheers to you. What a beautiful, beautiful welcome gift to Who Does She Think She Is? And who do I think I am is you. I'm reflective of you. I'm reflective of all Black women. And this made me very proud to sit, to smell this beautiful candle to remind me who I am, and just to add daily affirmations to keep me on track of who I am. And I have to say, my creative journey as a producer, working on art exhibits, podcasts, cultural storytelling through film and TV, and then just cultivating the next generation, which my daughter is part of that, has been all of a blessing. I'm shifting my attitude to gratitude and not necessarily I am honestly exhausted from seeing the rest of Black women do that. You know, I just think that what a time to be alive and to be Black and to create new platforms for ourselves and not be codependent on what our current presidency and the government is telling us who we should be. We've always been the culture creators.
Say it.
And
Say it.
we need to be reminded of that I don't need for you to build me a platform. I don't need for you to pull out a seat at the table. My table is where I'm at right now. My table is with you, and my table and my seat is wherever I carry. So I'm very proud to be recognized on who do I think I am, or who does she think she is. Very proud to be recognized for that. Yeah. So thank you.
I feel like I could write a book on what you just said, because what a time to be Black. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
build my own table. I don't need you to hold the chair out for me.
We don't need to hold the chair. We got foldable chairs now that we can take with us.
Said we have foldable chairs. We do.
Foldable chairs,
We really
collapsible
do.
seats. We do that we could take with us. And, you know, coming into this business as a storyteller, you know, I like to say that my journey as a storyteller started off in elementary school, because I was the little girl that was always like, "Oh, I read the book. I want to share my side of the story, what I thought about the book." Not knowing, you don't realize knowing those are your stepping stones to becoming who you will become. I didn't know that until I had a language arts teacher, Miss K, pulled me aside one day and said, "I need to talk to you. Your book reports seem a little embellished." I didn't know what that word meant at the time. I said, "Embellished?" She goes, "Who's writing your book reports for you?" I said, "I write my book reports." And she says, "Well, how do you know how to use inflections and ebb and flows and commas and punctuation marks? Like, how do you know how to do that?" And I learned that because my mother was a court reporter.
Wait. Your mother is a court reporter?
She was a court reporter at the time for the Seattle Police Department. She would always time my speeches, and she would time my book reports. And she did that, and I would be annoyed. I was like, "Why do you have to time me all the time?" She said, "Because you need to get straight to the point, tell your story, and you need to have some inflection so people feel it." And so I said, so I was trained from her, one. And then my father, who was a connoisseur of vinyl records and reel to reels, anytime that he would play his records, he would always say, "Here, I'm about to play this Isaac Hayes. Read the liner notes to me." And I said, "Well, where are the liner notes?" He goes, "Open up the record." And I would open up the record, Mele, and I would just be fascinated with these beautiful words and fascinated with the artwork. Again, not knowing that this was going to carry me to be a storyteller, to be a curator of arts. And so I would read these words, and hold on to this language and always say, when I get a chance to write, this is how I'm going to write, colorful. So when I explained that to Miss Candy, she said, oh, you're a different kid. She said, I want you to think about your career. Mind you, I'm in elementary school. So
Wait. What year in elementary? Let's benchmark this.
So maybe seventh grade. Is that elementary?
It is like middle school.
Middle school.
Elementary is 5th and 6th. So you were
Yeah,
middle school.
sorry. So middle school.
No, that's okay. You're probably about 12.
Yeah. Exactly. And she said, I want you to start thinking about your career as you get into high school. She said, you are a storyteller, and there is a gift to that. And a lot of people don't know how to read and then translate. And what you've been doing is that you've been translating how you see it. She said, but your language is so colorful that I really thought that you were, and somebody was helping you with the stories. And I said, no. So she says, well, when you get to high school, I want you to think about, like, you can write for newspapers. You could be a journalist. I said, I didn't think about that. So it always stayed with me. And I studied broadcast journalism at University of Houston. I shortly realized, no, this is not what I want to do, because I thought I was going to go to journalism school and become Madeline Woods from BET or Mary Hart,
Not a bad role model.
It was
not a role model.
Not a bad set of goals, but the courses were not on course for me because they were too, it was too conservative and too stiff. And I wanted to have flavor. And so I decided I decided my third year of college, I'm out. I'm going to go touch the world, and I'm going to New York, and I wanted to work at Vibe magazine was my goal. I get to New York. I don't work at Vibe magazine. When I first get there, I end up getting like a paid internship at this magazine company. It was a home decor magazine, online home decor magazine. Well, my roommate happened to know someone that worked at Vibe and said, hey, they're looking for an assistant in the CEO's office. I said, oh, I'm going to go and apply. I go apply, get to Vibe. It feels like Boomerang when I walk in the office. It's all black. The walls are cobalt blue with these silver letters that say Vibe.
Stop. You're painting a picture of my dream. And yes, Boomerang, which I've watched probably 37.
So you remember that scene where it opens up and you just see women and black people walking around.
And everybody is fire.
Yes.
And that's owning their skill.
Yes, that's what Vibe look like. I fill out an application. For whatever reason, the girl goes, can you wait for a minute? HR wants to come up and meet with you. Black woman comes up. She's got a question. You're applying for a job here, but I see your background says Seattle, Washington. Are you visiting? Are you planning on relocating? And I said, I'm visiting. And if I get a job, then I'm going to relocate. And so she goes, well, come on downstairs. I want to interview you. She interviews me. And then after her interview with me, she takes me into another office and had no idea that I was walking into the office of Quincy Jones.
Stop it right now. Stop. I'm going to need you to pause. It's not coffee. It's not coffee in this mug. It's not. I need a moment.
I'm 24 years old.
Quincy Jones? First of all,
I'm 24 years old. Cheers.
Because your bravado, your confidence, it's more than words. It's more than an experience. The way that you, even when your teacher asked you, you could have just said, yes, it's me. But instead, you gave her the history and the origin story of your creative genius.
Yeah.
You delivered it. And you continued to follow that and foster that. That takes so much more.
It does,
What I'm hearing you're giving it credit for. It sounds regular to you, but I want you to know that there's a lot of us out there who are like, we can't do that.
But I think it felt natural to me because it's part of my character makeup and part of my personality. Because also, too, my mother's side job was the Avon lady. And I was fascinated with knocking on the doors and said, oh, let me take their package to them. And hi, it's Erika. We got your package. I was a girl that had the lip balm that was clipped on the hamburger lip balm that you flip up. Yeah. Fascinated with all the lipstick.
I don't know that all of our audiences know what Avon is. It's Avon, Mary Kay.
To Mary Kay. So
folks, younger folks, look it up.
Right. Look it up. Do your homework.
Yes.
So none of those things made me nervous because it was almost like it was rooted in me as a childhood. So I get into Quincy's office, and again, being young, naive, also too being young and not having a sense of what corporation is. It's just like, gonna have me. I mean, my literal response was like, Quincy Jones. And he said, yeah. He said, yeah, baby. what you doing here? What
He
you
did
know
not say,
about?
yeah, baby.
He said, yeah, baby. He said, what you know about Seattle? What you doing here from Seattle? And I said, well, that's where I'm from. He goes, that's where I'm from. I like to play music. And I said, yes. And he said, well, how long are you going to be here? And I said, well, hopefully if I get a job, then I'm here.
As long as you want me.
And so he says, well, what are you doing here? And I says, well, I'm visiting a friend who's actually getting ready to go on tour. He said, go on tour? What's the friend doing? I says, have you heard of this group called Digwell Planets? Cool like that? He goes, have I heard of them? I mean, they just sampled every bebop, jazz, so. And to me, at 24 and meeting this man, he was just so cool that it just made it tangible and easy for me to be in the room with him. And he says, well, how long are you going to be visiting? I said, well, I'm house sitting because he's getting ready to start his first European tour. So I'm house sitting for him. He said, okay. Okay. He said, well, it was nice meeting you. So I'm still not thinking nothing of it, but I just thought this was a simple interview. This is more like a meet and greet. It didn't feel like an
Right.
interview.
That doesn't sound like an
And
interview at all.
yeah, so I leave. I'm wondering about the city. Ishmael, the guy that I'm coming to house sit for from Digable Planets, calls me and goes, yo, when you heading back to Brooklyn? I said, oh, I'm kind of just going about the city, just staying in the city. I went to go put an application in at Vibe. You won't believe who I've met. So I'm telling him the story. And he goes, all right, when you get here, there's a voicemail here for you. I
A
said, okay.
voicemail.
And this is when you have to hit the recorder.
I remember. I remember.
I get back to Brooklyn. He goes, check your message. Check the message. It's Lynn McDaniels, who was the HR lady at Vibe, calling me to say, hey, not sure when you're returning back to Seattle. I do understand that you're here house sitting, but Quincy and I want to offer you the position. Please call me before 5 p.m. and let me know that you want the position.
Okay, I'm going to stop you right here. I have to. I have to. Why you? Tell me, why
Right.
you?
I
mean,
to
I
this
know why
day,
you, but back then, why you?
to this day, I still question, like, why was I chosen? I had no background in journalism in terms of writing. I wasn't from New York. Left my third year in college, so I didn't show up with a degree. And here I am just popping up at their offices, filling out an application for a receptionist for the CEO office, not knowing that it's Quincy. What is it? Why did Lynn hire me? And it's interesting because I actually just spoke with Lynn maybe 2 weeks ago because she's back and forth from LA because she's in DC now. And she's back and forth. She said, I just wanted to reach out to you and say hello. And I asked her one day, I said, Lynn, why did you guys hire me? She said, it was your light. There was something about your light that we knew this girl is going to stay here and she is super immersive in the culture. You were immersive in the culture when you started talking about how you discovered Vibe and you would read it and you started naming off the the journalists that you follow, Kevin Powell, Dream Hampton, Bones Malone's. Then you went in what got Quincy's that you went into the art direction on how that magazine looked. And we were like, oh yeah, we got to bring her on. And I was like, just thank you for that because I simply was just applying for a job. I didn't know where this was going to take me. And I ended up being in New York for 12 years, So I was at Vibe at the time when
Erica,
they were
what?
only on their second issue. So their second issue was Wesley Snipes. He had concrete on his face.
The name,
He was
hold
just,
on though. Hold on. You got to slow down. There are just so many wow moments and names that you're throwing at me. This is normal for you.
yeah.
This is next level for me. And I am just trying to absorb it and take it in. I'm not sure I can keep up. I'm going to raise my hand and admit that the star power you're pulling to the table. When you talked about walking in there and interviewing, you mentioned just going in there and being starstruck, but you didn't even mention all the things that you did say and share in that room. Your knowledge of the platform, of the culture, of the community, of the vibe that they were trying to create at Vibe,
Mm-hmm.
those things you were so
Mm-hmm.
immersed in it, it didn't even occur to you that those were some of the key highlights.
Those were right. Right.
You
Those were
understood the assignment and the brand when you went in there,
right.
right?
Right. Right. Not even knowing, you know what I mean? But again, she said, but that's why we brought you on board because you were our brand. You were the culture that Quincy wanted to cultivate. And it
Exactly.
was such a beautiful experience because he was not a gatekeeper. Quincy depended on us to tell him what that culture was. He depended on us to say, who is the next that should be on the cover and why? And participating in those Wednesday collaborative meetings and having a voice. And I just remember he would sit at those tables when he was in town, because most of the time he was always on his yacht.
Okay.
So it's so funny because we didn't realize that was Zoom back then when they would do the conference calls through
Right, right.
yes. We were like, shit, that was Zoom back then. But and he would go around the table and goes, hey, so and so didn't say nothing. Erika, where's your voice? Why does the Fugees need to be on the cover? You know what I mean? So everybody had a voice on that platform.
So as a leader now, how much of the Quincy Jones model, how much of that type of inclusive leadership do you emulate?
Well, I think it's still with me. It's a thread, through my career, which has allowed me, the question that you said, who does she think she is?
Mhm.
It allowed me to be a storyteller. It allowed me to be a curator of the culture. I think too, what it did for me, it allowed me to see gaps and stories that don't get told.
Oh, say more about that.
And what I mean by that is like they don't get told from the artists, that don't get seen. It allowed me to build platforms for them because I saw that was early on Black music industry cultivating, not knowing where it was going to go because it was a transition from R&B into hip hop.
Mhm.
And then it became a marriage of R&B and hip hop. And then it became a cultivation of, I mean, you go from Tony to D'Angelo to young Erica Badu
Mhm.
to Little Kim, Foxy Brown to Bad Boy, you
Yeah.
know what I mean? To Def Jam, where it was like all of these things shifted the culture, but they became the engine of the culture. And also, too, it reminded me that Black women can be in leadership behind that.
Say that again, if you could, louder and slower, because I needed to hear that.
It was a reminder that Black women can be a leader, can be a creator, and can own our narratives with power and purpose because those industries were not designed for us. And Quincy pushed us out there. He pushed our voices out there and said, you guys matter. You need to have a voice in this.
So he did
That,
more than not be a gatekeeper. He created a channel and a path. He cleared the path for
yes.
you and kind of nudged you along.
Yep.
You know what I'm hearing?
Yep. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I can only imagine if that was your first introduction to that professional space and experience. How you already mentioned that you are not a gatekeeper for others, but how much of that style do you emulate? How many opportunities do you create? Is that a priority for you in your process?
It's very much a priority. And it's very much a priority because it also shifted for me at the time that I realized that I felt like I was outgrowing Vibe a little bit in that position
Mm.
because then it became Quincy empowered me so much that it became, where do I go from here?
Yeah.
Do I become the CEO of the magazine? It wasn't really my desire, although I loved it. I also felt like around that time I was kind of growing out of that space and I wanted more.
Yes.
I became very hungry for more. And that more became because we were creating Vibe TV. And so I was always traveling from New York to LA because of Vibe TV. It gave me more of an appetite like, oh, what's in the film space? There's storytellers in this space. There are women in this space. I don't see a lot of Black women, but there are women in this space, which then opened up the door to me with John Singleton.
How did you know? Like, when did you realize that you were changing the narrative for Black women in the entertainment industry and even beyond that? Because entertainment touches everyone. So when I
Everyone, right?
watch School
Right.
Days, when I watch It Changed My World, how did you know you were doing that?
Well, that's interesting because just what you said, when I watched Boys in the Hood, I was in
Mm.
college. I watched Boys in the Hood. And prior to that, I had never, ever sat in a movie theater and watched credits. And I did it because I was so emotional after the movie. And I was like, who did this movie that is so part of the culture, so part of the neighborhood, so emotional? And not only that, the storytelling of it, it's like I saw myself in Brandy, Nia Long. I saw myself in Regina
Mm-hmm.
King. I saw
Mm-hmm.
my cousins in Ricky. I saw friends that I went to high school in Doughboy. I had an aunt in Doughboy's mother that was like, "You ain't shit. You look at you, you little fat motherfucker. You ain't gonna be." You know what I mean? Like that. That was
So
as Black
triggering,
people.
right? That just hit, right?
It was it was triggering. So I was like, "Oh my god, who did this movie?" So I sat to watch the credits, and when John Singleton's name came up, phonetically to me, I was like, "That don't sound like a Black person.
It doesn't.
Who did
So
this
when did
movie?"
you find out it was?
He was on Madeline Wood's show on BET. He was on
It
Madeline
took
Wood's.
BET for us to identify that this brilliant
Identify,
mind
right?
brother.
Watching Madeline Woods, and she says, next coming up, we got filmmaker John Singleton. Now I'm in college, getting ready to go to class. And I said, oh, I ain't going to class. I need to watch. I need to find out who this guy is. Commercial goes, John pops back up. He looks 12. And I'm like, he looks 12.
He ages well.
Right? Who's this young black?
As do we.
Right. Who's this young black filmmaker? And he was so profound in the way that he spoke. And his story of, I'm a USC film student. I only wrote from my experience, and I knew I was a storyteller. And at the end of the conversation, Madeline goes, to get a hold of John Singleton, you can write him at New Deal Productions. This is when they would put
Stop.
this is when they would put.
And I already know you went and you started writing immediately.
I wrote it down. I wrote him, never heard from him. I leave college, now I'm at Vibe. We're doing the Vibe music seminars that only cover music artists. Again, I told you, on Wednesdays, we have our staff meetings, and Quincy goes, everybody, pull all the things that you want to see happen out the box. Mine was, I want to see filmmakers at the Vibe music seminar. And so he goes, well, why would we need to see filmmakers? I said, Quincy, we're always covering music artists. Where are these young black filmmakers? There's John Singleton touched me so deeply in college. Why are we not covering him in the magazine? Why are we not uplifting him at the podiums? Why are we not covering Ted Dwitcher, who just did Love Jones? Why are we not covering Hank Williams, who revolutionized music videos? He goes, well, you just create yourself a job. Go find them.
Okay. This very rarely ever happens. It very rarely ever happens to us. So just hear you walk me through this. It builds a different level of respect, a different perception of Quincy Jones. Excuse me. I don't know him. I do not get to.
No boss,
but like
ever push you in the driver's seat.
No,
and so you drive the car.
Listen,
right?
You're brilliant, but still, that is so rare. So, okay. For those listening, I don't want to get so hyped up that I can't even slow down to recognize what a moment this is. Number one, to have a leader, a CEO, an executive that puts you in the driver's seat, someone young, different, with new and extraordinary ideas that are outside of the box. There's no box for you. Clearly, there's no box.
No, there's never been
that. From a moment that you saw in an interview, where you took that in a whole different direction. Now, John Singleton is a peer.
Yes.
Pause. Hard pause. The person or one of the many that inspired you is a peer, and a peer that you work alongside of on a regular basis. How does that even shape your approach to storytelling and production when you get to work alongside of someone that inspired you first, that charted a course for your career just by doing their best work?
Right. Well, it's interesting because what Quincy did for me, beyond that boost of confidence, that I have a voice, and there's power behind that voice because there's power behind the person that's standing behind me to say, use that voice, and challenge me to go find that person, and then to find John, which wasn't very hard. I didn't have to go and peel any layers.
Did he respond this time?
Well, he didn't have to respond because John called into the office.
Stop it.
So that was serendipity. So in the moment of him going, go find him, and me scrambling going, ooh, okay, where do I start? Because I was never afraid to go do it, because I also felt like I had Vibe behind me. I worked for Vibe magazine, so that was going to be my entry point. It was, how do I get to him, right? Serendipity happens because it is the Vibe music seminar. At that time, that was the hottest invite that you wanted to be invited to. So everybody was calling, from the coaches of the Knicks down to LA Reid's people, like, hey, we need more invites. Hey, we need a ticket to. So everybody wanted to be at this event. Serendipity happens. Phone rings. Good afternoon, Quincy Jones's office. Can I help you? Yes, John. John, can I get your last name, please? Singleton. It's not happening. This is not happening.
I'm sorry. Did you answer the phone?
Yes, because I always had to answer Quincy's line and keep Clinscale's phone.
Wait. You were answering the phone when John Singleton called?
It was the executive assistant. Mind you, the position was an assistant. Quincy goes, no, you're the executive assistant. You have to execute orders in this office.
I'm sorry, this is too delicious. You can't even make this shit up. This is crazy. Sip your.
I had two phones I had to answer.
Champagne and
okay.
Yeah.
I had two phones I had to answer: Quincy's and Keith Clinscale's. And he goes, it's John. And I said, John, can I get your last name? Singleton. So now I'm like, whoa, I could do two things. I can remain professional and transfer this line to Quincy, or Erika take the opportunity and have that conversation with John.
Erika, why is that an or? Why did you see an either or with professionalism? Both would have been professional.
Well, I recognized that I was also answering and working at the front desk for Quincy Jones's office. And I knew that I had to have a rapport.
Sure.
And there were two things that Keep Clean Scales. So Quincy was the owner of Vibe. Keep Clean Scales was CEO of Vibe. And then there was Lynn McDaniels, who was head of HR. And one thing Lynn said, you're going to get a lot of celebrities. There's going to be a lot of influential people that are going to call. Please do not hold conversation, transfer the line, and try to stay professional.
I understand. Thank you for clarifying that. Yes.
So that was in the back of my mind, because one, it was like, oh God, if I don't do this, what if I lose my job because I was unprofessional? But then it was the other part of, Quincy is so cool that if I later tell him I didn't get a chance to talk to John, he'd be like, well, why? You had him on the phone.
He literally called and you picked up the
He
phone.
calls in and I said, John, before I transfer you to Quincy, my name is Erika. I'm Quincy and Keeps Clean Scales assistant. And I just have to tell you this. Boys in the Hood changed my entire life on filmmaker making. John was a little bit persnickety and sarcastic. He was just black.
Wait. What did he say to you? What did
He says, I'm trying to be, mind you, I'm 24. I'm trying to be as professional, right? And he goes, okay. He's like,
No.
he goes, well, how did it change you? And I said, I never watched film credits. And I think it clicked to him. I said, I never watched film credits prior to Boys in the Hood. He goes, word?
Yeah.
And I said, yeah.
Nobody
He goes,
cares.
He goes, that's what he said. He said, that's weird. He said, nobody cares. If you're not in the industry, nobody cares about the credits. He goes, what made you stay to watch the credits? I said, because I was so emotionally distraught after the movie.
Who did this to me?
I said, I couldn't believe Ricky died. I wanted to fight Doughboy. I wanted to fight everybody in the community. And I said, and also too, I said, I grew up in Seattle. So the Crips and Bloods were prevalent on my high school campus, and I said, and Doughboy's mom, I said, that was reflected. I have an aunt that's like that. So there were so many triggering points in this movie. I needed to find out.
He was telling your story.
I needed to find out who made the movie. And he said, wow. He goes, okay. And I said, so John, I said, I would love to extend an invite, not only for you just to come to the Vibe Music Seminar, but you should host a panel for us. He said, oh, okay, cool. He was like, take my Sky pager down.
Right, hold on. Sometimes we have to take that opportunity. I mean, I'm still reacting to the fact that you said pager.
Yeah, he said, take my Sky pager down. I said, okay.
But you took that opportunity. You took that moment and you took the opportunity.
I took the opportunity, and it was great because when he landed, I also too was very because I worked in Quincy's office, and anytime that we had to pick people up from the airport, anybody that was influential that for me at that time, I always made sure that I was in the car service to go to the airport to pick the people up.
Smart.
Because I looked at that as a little of a concierge service.
Yeah.
I had to convince Quincy of that because he kept saying, you can't keep using these car vouchers. You cannot keep picking these. And I said, no, it's concierge service for them. He goes, oh, okay, you're classy.
See, you had him look at it in a different way. So what advice would you give to fellow Black women, even younger professionals who may be scared to take opportunities that come their way? Because that was a very clear directive. Do not engage. Stay professional.
Stay perfect. Yes.
So what advice would you give?
I'm going to be very authentic and not go with
nothing else. That's why I sent you champagne.
Thank you. I'm going to be very authentic and not go with the necessarily words that we always hear, because I do panels, I do speaking engagements, and I get very frustrated when I hear other panelists give a standard. Here's my advice, because I feel like that's not the advice that was for yourself.
Listen, truth or nothing. Truth or nothing. Right.
So I think my advice would be, you don't have to fit a mold to succeed. And I think that women, we put ourselves in this mold because of our gender. And then because of our race as Black women, we put ourselves in this mold. We're all very different. We're all very valid. We're all very vulnerable. And I think that to create your own personal mold is to move in your most authentic way. And I think I moved in my most authentic way that worked for me, which made me stand out, which allowed me to navigate in different places. And I think what it did was it created this sense of freedom that disconnected me from the corporate America way of how to move and what that advice was. And I always tell people I'm kind of like the Avon lady. So I move a little, I move
Full circle.
full circle. I move a little differently. And my differentness is I just move with my authentic voice and my authentic self. And being an Avon lady, you got to feel the room out. You got to know what your buyer wants. You got to know what that particular personality is. You also got to be true to your personality. And you also got to be able to read the room so that you're knowing how to disperse the advice to someone. You know what I mean? So it's almost like it's based on a one-on-one trial, if that makes sense. But I also think that too, just stand in your truth. That's the best advice that I could give you, is to really stand in your truth. Because when we try to follow the advice of someone goes, well, someone told me and they gave me this advice. If it doesn't resonate with you, don't take it. If a little pieces of it goes, that kind of resonates with me. I'm going to take little pieces of that and apply it to authentically who I am. So I just always move differently. I've always been told in this industry from my peers, from people that I create with, they always say, you are really a different bird, Erika, in terms of your wings are so different. They can't be clipped. You almost can't be pulled down, because
I
even in
love
my
it.
pulling down, I find a way to still fly. Like, okay, I got to fly away from you. You know what I
It's
mean?
because
Or,
they don't see you coming. What you said that resonated most with me, because one of my core values is authenticity and
yeah,
integrity. And integrity can have a myriad of definitions. Are you doing what you say you're going to do? Are you following the set guidelines and rules? Or are you staying
right.
true to exactly what standard? What I'm hearing you say is, people can't stop me. People can't clip my wings because I'm staying true to my own identity and standard. And you didn't write that governance for me. I did.
Correct.
And it sounds like you were honored by being paired with a leader, a CEO, an organization that valued that in you. So you knew when to step slightly outside of the mold of professionalism, because he also gave you runway and asked you to engage with John Singleton. This
Absolutely
is
gave me runway.
so
Absolutely.
powerful, because when we shrink, it is extremely uncomfortable.
And
I don't see you shrinking at all.
no, well, also too, what's interesting is when men give you leverage,
Mm-hmm.
and this isn't everything in corporate America, in your relationships, in your friendships with men, when men give you a leverage, because when they tell you, go, I see you, go shine, I'm gonna push you
Mm-hmm.
out to the front, I trust you, that gives you such big wings, and
Mm-hmm.
it gives you so much confidence, because we're so used to men tearing us down in terms of like, oh no, you can't be a leader, oh no, you should be fear, so I think between Quincy as my first boss coming out of college, then John Singleton as my second boss,
Mm.
shifting from vibe, going to work with John Singleton, having that opportunity, because he was another person. I said, John, why did you hire me? I have no film experience. I didn't go to film school. He said, I did that on purpose because anybody can speak on films from a revelation of film school and what they studied. I needed somebody that was part of the culture, that was
Mhm.
fearless, that can go and touch the world, and that could be authentic storytellers. And I knew then, after I had met you at the Vibe seminar and we hung out at the Shark Bar and talked, you were a storyteller, you were a critical thinker, and you were in the wrong position. It was time for you to get out of Vibe. And the
Ooh.
timing was right for him, because he had just did a deal with Warner Brothers Television, and he was looking for a director of development. And he said, in Hollywood, everyone that I wanted to interview wanted to be in front of the camera. They didn't want the job behind the scenes. And I kept trying to empower Black women, because I didn't see enough of you guys behind the scenes as producers, as casting directors. There's so many positions that you guys are unaware of that Hollywood ain't gonna never tell you. So here I am, being a young Black man that has an opportunity to bring on young Black people, in particular a woman. He said, I think it was just fate that I made that phone call. We started talking, you introduced yourself, and I said, I'm gonna just throw it out there to see if she'd be interested to come work with me. And
This
I
is
said no the first time. Jump at it. I did not jump at it because of fear. Not because it was an ego or like, It was fear.
What were you afraid of?
I did not have TV or film background. This is John Singleton. By this time, he's nominated for an Oscar as first young Black director.
So you thought that you didn't have what it takes. You didn't think you were good enough.
No. And
Okay.
I was just like, I don't know if I'm right for that position, John. I don't know. I don't know what a producer is. He said, I'm going to groom you. And I was like, can you just give me a minute, please? And also, too, I was so in love with Vibe. I have this love affair with Vibe in New York.
Yeah.
I did not want to come to California. Then I said, okay, I thought about it. Can I do it from New York and LA? He goes, no, you got to be immersive in it. And thank God that I had a solid core of sisterhood in New York that said, are you crazy? This is like freaking Spike Lee calling, saying, hey, I want to hire you. You didn't even go after the position, Erika. He came to you.
You know how rare it is for a sister to get tapped on the shoulder. It is unheard of, even in 2025.
Yes.
There's no shoulder tapping.
Just come
There's
on.
never been
especially
shoulder
right now,
tapping
economy
for
we
us.
are in, right?
I'm
wish
getting mad
that
right
John Cena
now. I
would
know
tap
this happened
me,
a while ago, but I'm kind of mad at you. I love you. I appreciate you. I see you. I
I
get it.
was scared. And for whatever reason, this man believed in me because he kept saying, hey, you don't take this position, I'm gonna hire somebody else. Because John was arrogant a little bit, like, I'm gonna hire somebody else, you don't take this position.
Well, there was some arrogance there because he's thinking, do you know who I am?
Hey, like, you told me,
Right,
no,
Erika, he's thinking, who does she think she is
right?
to say, I need a moment to the best opportunity of her life?
And I was scared to leave Vibe and Quincy and was thinking, what am I going to tell him? And it wasn't until I had my conversations with my girlfriends, conversation with my mom and my dad. It was Thanksgiving and something clicked in me. I was in the bathroom in my brownstone and I remember looking at myself going, what are you afraid of? You have an opportunity to elevate your career. Why are you afraid? And I still couldn't answer it. And I remember not texting, I sky paged him back and said, okay, I'm ready to come, but can you relocate me?
Okay.
And
I like
I
that
only,
you asked for what you needed to make it work.
I only found out that information because I talked to Lynn McDaniels first before I told Quincy. And I said,
Okay.
Lynn, I have an opportunity to go work with John. I'm a little afraid to tell Quincy and Keith. Really? I said, yeah. And I said, but also too, I'm moving. If I have to move to LA, I don't even know if I have enough money saved up. I mean, I'm 26 working at Vibe magazine. I mean, I'm in New York. We fly. I ain't thinking about saving money. I'm spending money. So I had to go look at my savings. I said, I don't even have enough savings to relocate. She said, oh no, this is what you tell him. You call him back and you negotiate. This is a studio. You say, hey, if you want to hire me, then where are the relocation fees?
Okay, this to me is beautiful. You not only have a sisterhood, you have a professional network of folks that will help coach you to ask for what you deserve.
Yep.
You
Yep.
already know that the premise of this show and my career is everything to do with wealth identity and money
Yes.
culture. So even
Yes.
early on, you're getting this. So working with John, I want to unpack how that shaped your storytelling approach, but I can't, I gotta pause here. I gotta pause here and say, how uncomfortable was it for you to ask for what you deserve financially?
Well, it was so uncomfortable that I didn't ask. That's why I said I had to send it through the Sky page because I was so scared.
You couldn't even use the words. Okay.
I
But
couldn't
you
even use
did
the
send it.
words.
Good.
And so I sent it through a Sky page like, hey, I've decided I do want to come. I need to know what what my financial window looks like. I don't have a vehicle because I live in New York. So I need to have money for a vehicle. I need to have money to relocate. Are there relocation fees?
You asked for a bonus,
Yeah.
an
Yep.
upfront bonus.
And it was one word he sent back. He's like, yeah, just get here.
Hold on. Shoulder shimmy moment. You better give it to me. This is a
He
full
said,
shoulder shimmy moment because
he
you
said,
knew he
just
wanted you and you asked for what you needed to make it happen.
yeah. Yep. He said, yes. He said, just get here. And a contract arrived from Warner Brothers with relocation fees. I think I had like less than 30 days to relocate. So I went through this heartbreak and, oh my God, I'm making the move. I'm coming to LA. And I just remember getting here again, not having a car. And I think it went over John's head until I kept bringing in the taxi cab receipts. And one day he said, why do you keep bringing me all these cab receipts? And I said, that's how I get to work. He goes, you ain't got a car? I said, no. He says, how you don't have a car? I said, John, you forgot I lived in New York for 12 years. He said, oh, yeah, yeah. He said, you gotta get a car. So this is what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna advance you your payroll. Advance you 3 months payroll. You gotta go get a car because you gotta get to the lot. You gotta get to the studio.
Right.
So even that, I was gracious that again, he believed enough in me to say, hey, let me get this girl set up. So I had to overperform for John. And it was the greatest learning experience because John he was not a hands-on boss. He was a watch me work and then would turn
Interesting.
around and say, let me see what you got. And so he threw me to the sharks. And I remember being so afraid because John would never come to the lot, only when needed. And I would say, hey, we got to go and pitch this concept. What time are you coming in? He goes, I'm not. That's why I hired you. You're the storyteller. You need to be in the room. You need to learn the language. You need to learn those executives and how they move. And if I come in the room, I'm going to overshadow you.
Oh, huh.
I didn't get it then, though. I was so mad at him because I was like, what kind of boss is this? I'm just walking in these rooms by
This
my
was different than Quincy.
totally different. But it was the best learning experience because what it did, it revalidated who do I think I am? This is who I am. I'm his
You know who
director
you
of
are. You're a
development.
storyteller.
I'm running his company. I got to show up differently now. I'm not hiding behind an office and a telephone. I'm
And a
in front of
brand.
this now.
And a brand.
Right. And a brand, right? I got to show up for this guy. And so he did. He gave me a lot of runway to do that. And so as I start thinking, when you were sending me the questions and trying to remember, who do I think I am? I had to go back and go, golly, as I'm peeling the curtains back of my early beginnings of my career, it was all men that opened up the curtains for me.
That is so rare. You know what I mean? We know what the pain is. And I wish I could say that that has been my experience. It really
Yeah.
isn't. It wasn't men. It wasn't even women.
Right.
It was grinding it out and building it myself. So you know what the value is. So as a leader, as a woman leader, as a Black woman leader, how then do you define success for yourself?
I guess I've had to assert my vision with confidence. And being a Black woman in these creative spaces, a lot of times you're underestimated, particularly in Hollywood. It didn't feel that way when I was in New York. I don't know why. It definitely feels this way in Hollywood.
New York was
And
music.
that's yes. And I
Hollywood
guess
is visual.
it's visual, right? So I have to lead with clarity, collaboration, so that I don't shrink. I also walk in knowing that my voice is just as valid and my voice is unique and it's valuable and it's of a different experience because at one point I felt like coming to Hollywood versus being in New York, it felt like being Black in Hollywood was monolith. So I had to figure out a way like, nope, my voice and my vision has to stand out in a very different way, particularly in a very unconventional and or male dominated industry. But I always too led in not, because some people lead it. Some people ask, how was it that you had to walk into a room and being Black? That never was in the forefront because one thing my dad told me, and also too a little bit about my background, I come from an ex-Black Panther father who I thought was crazy when I was young because he would keep a mirror on the back of the front door. And I was like, why is this mirror always here? He was like, because I need you to look at yourself before you walk out that front door. Tell me what you see. And I was like, Black girl. He goes, no, beyond that, they're going to naturally see that. What's here? What's here and what's here? And how are you going to lead with both of those things? So I always had to remind myself, navigating through that business, that it wasn't just the color. They're going to naturally see that. So they're going to project, but they can't see here and they can't see here. And so it changed the trajectory in the room. Once I did start speaking or once I started sharing ideas or leading in the room, it just changed it a lot for me.
So you
So
didn't
it
let
made it,
that cloud your identity. You led with
no,
identity first.
no, I was actually always just proud that I could walk in being Black.
Because there's so much to be proud of.
Yeah. Yeah.
So how do you use that confidence and that awareness and all of your experience to create space for other people of color, other Black women that follow you, or even in this professional landscape right now?
I just I want to hold us up in confidence. I want to hold us up in making sure that we're investing into ourselves and our community. And I want to leave room for exactly those moments that I had early in my career. And that is really helping navigate young Black girls, whether it's in arts, podcasts, storytelling, whatever it is. I want to leave room for them and be able to share this story because I think now this generation comes in thinking, I want to be where you are right now in the next 2 days. And if it doesn't happen in the next 2 days, then I'm quitting.
Right.
And to me, then you're quitting on yourself because you did not give yourself room to scrape your ankles and your knees. You did not give yourself room to have some type of failure and feel okay with that. Like,
Exactly.
oh, I flubbed that one. Well, I'm going to get back up. It's the Aaliyah song, dust yourself off and try again. I want to leave room for those type of women, you know what I mean? And applaud them and share space with them.
Mhm.
Because I've been in spaces where the hierarchy in this industry where I would read about certain women in Essence magazine and then come across them and I was like, ooh, you didn't make me feel comfortable and wanted.
Right.
That doesn't feel good to me. Like,
Right.
whoa. It made me sad, Mele, because again, I was like, why is it just the men that help me? But then when I go to my sisters, I'm not pulled in.
That makes me sad because
It makes me sad
we need
because
each other.
I think those type of women operated from the opposite what I was saying. They operated for no, I had to scrape and get here, and I'm not letting anybody get here. It's just me.
Or they're so afraid that their space will be threatened by someone else.
Right.
And that is not the reality.
No.
So often this idea of strong Black women is pushed on us. I'm curious to know how you balance strength and the stereotype that is being reflected back to us with that authentic presence and being able to deliver yourself and the vulnerability and care that you lead with when you're working on these creative projects and with these teams.
Well, I think a lot of it is my principles first, and my principles on what I stand on and how I'm going to lead with that. That it has to be a thread through my confidence, how I'm leading. I think it's also too, it helps with things like this that you just gave us, starting off with some type of affirmations to remind you. And I also think that it's funny because I shared a story that I always keep this pocket Bible in my console of the car
Yeah.
because sometimes when I am leading, when I know that I have to walk into a big room and I have to perform, I always have to ask God, lead me with your words, lead me with your words, and lead me with the energy that's in the room, and let me navigate that way. Because I think it's a false narrative for anybody to say, "Oh, I'm never afraid." Because when you're not afraid, then you're complacent.
Mm-hmm.
When you're complacent, you ain't living anymore. You're just coexisting. I
Say it.
always want to be a little afraid because that little afraid is that engine that restarts, that reboots. I always want to feel a little uncomfortable sometimes in the room because I want to find my safety net through somebody else that's in the room, as opposed, you know what I mean? So I don't know how to give a direct answer to that, but by
I
just
think you
leading
did
with that,
answer it.
that inner confidence that has to be reminded again through that little Bible verse I have to read, my affirmation cards, and just again falling back on the pillars of what my principles are.
Yeah. What I'm hearing you say is, I don't care what's being pushed on me. I know who I am. I know what I need. And I know that a little bit of fear is healthy.
Yeah.
I love that. And I respect it
Yeah.
and admire it because it's true. This idea that there's some kind of secret sauce and perfect solution
It's
is,
just your sauce. It ain't no secret. It's just your sauce.
you said there's no secret. It's just your sauce.
Yep.
So you don't need me to tell you that you're incredibly successful. You literally have your 19-year-old daughter who is clawing at the opportunity to just spend time with you. That's
Yes.
rare. To me,
Yeah.
that is clear, defined success. But when did you know that you made it? When did you know?
To be honest with you, the moment I knew, like, wow, I made it was when I bought my first home
Mm.
at 29 years old, because that taught me financial education. It taught me financial responsibility because prior to that, it goes back to being young and getting the bag. I was like, I'm getting the
It
bag
was enough
here.
to make the money, right? Didn't know what to do
Yes.
with it.
Didn't know what to do with it. Although I was traveling, I was that girl. My grandmother always kept saying, you're going to be the last Mohican to have some kids. The rest of your cousins got kids. What are you doing? I had 3 boyfriends.
I didn't see that coming. You went from last of the Mohicans to 3 boyfriends. Okay.
I had a boyfriend in New York. I had one in Seattle and I had one in LA.
Erika, did they know?
No,
Okay.
two the two between New York and LA found out
Oh.
because it was an event that I went to with the one in New York and did not anticipate seeing him from LA at this particular event. And that was the moment I said, I will never do this again. I don't like this feeling. But also, too, was a part of me, it was like, there's not a ring on my finger. And my grandmother used to always say, honey, you better learn how to P&G. And I was like, what's P&G? Play and go. And she was the one that said, you play and go and you keep you 3 boyfriends. And I remember
Wow.
my first year in college, I said, that's hoeing. She said, that's not hoeing. That's called play and go. That's called reservations. You keep,
Like that's a whole nother hour. But
yeah.
I feel
She
like
said,
it's a whole other hour and I want so bad to just chase that rabbit, but I'm not going to.
reservations.
I'm
Yeah,
not
she said,
going to.
you find
Because
one that is exactly aligned to your personality.
Mhm.
Then you find one that is aligned to the things that you like to do, whether it's a concert, the movies, plays, and then you find one that, no, this is going to be my man. And the one that's going to be your man got to know you got other suitors because he's going to stay on board and try the hardest, right?
Mhm.
And she was exactly right up until, like I said, I got busted and I just didn't like the feeling. And I was like, oh my God, I'm never going to do this again. And I need to buckle down because I'm traveling,
Sure.
I'm living life carelessly, I'm spending money. And it wasn't until there was a realtor that came to John's office because John was looking to get an office space outside of the lot. And it was a Black woman. She was from New Orleans.
Gonna
And she said, hey,
ask. Thank you.
she was a Black woman from New Orleans. And she said, well, let me ask about you. She said, so do you own some property? What are you doing? I said, no, I don't own property. I'm not interested in owning property. I'm back and forth to New York. I'm traveling. I'm doing it. She said, how old are you? I said, I'm 29. She said, you don't want to like settle down, have a family? I said, I will eventually. I'll let my husband get the house. She said, no, you don't want to do that. So she said, you are young, you are Black, you are in Hollywood. Buy you a piece of property if it's not personal property and buy you income property. I said, oh, you're going way too far now. Let's start at the personal property. Let's
Why
start
was
there.
hearing income property so scary?
Because I wasn't educated on it. And
Okay.
income property meant I had to be financially responsible. I had to show up. I had to be a boss,
So
meaning I had
you're
to
a
be the
boss
boss.
in all these other spaces. Why
Not
is
in
it
not in the financial space
okay?
because I made a very after I finished working with John and I went to go produce my first film, Idlewild with Outkast, I
Yes.
made a very clear choice that I did not want to be a line producer because for whatever reason, line producers handle budgets and the money. Money and budgets fucks with my creativity.
Okay. Two different
And
spaces.
yes, and I didn't want that to collaborate at all. And also too, being single and young and getting that much money. I mean, I was making great money at Vibe.
Right.
And then to transition from Vibe to Hollywood and looking at, I was like, huh? This is what I'm getting. I was about to say no to this. I just looked at it as, oh my God, I've made it.
Right. So
But I
so the
didn't.
more you made, the more you felt
The
like
more
you
I was,
made it.
yes.
Okay, so that was tied
So
to
it was tied to that. So I didn't become financially educated and aware and felt free until I purchased my first home. And I remember going through those steps when I said, I'm not sure if I want to be a homeowner. I'm not sure. She said, well, let me just educate you. Send me some pictures of things that you like, of homes. And I've always been that girl because, of course, I worked at a magazine that I would do tear sheets.
sure.
Love Hell Home Decor, Architectural Digest.
Mhm.
So I was pulling out tear sheets and I love like the Spanish terracotta homes. And I would send these images to Vanessa. And so she goes, okay, I'm going to pick you up one weekend. We're going to just go and look at some houses.
Her name was
Get to this
Vanessa.
one
Her name?
Yeah, we get to this one particular house, and I was like, "Oh my God, this house is so nice. This is beautiful." So she said, "You know, you can afford it." I said, "I can." She said, "Yeah, but the money you make, I've already done the background on you. I've already ran some numbers. I already have a financial planner for you. Her name is Jamie Johnson. You
Sister?
should meet." I didn't know it then because I was only emailing her. We didn't know that we were both sisters. And the way that she would email me, her conversation didn't project Black woman at all.
Why?
She was very thorough and very, I thought that time, she's too much of my business. Why you keep asking all these hard questions?
She
Why you
was
asking me all these
comfortable with
finance?
finances and money, and she could speak the
Exactly. And
language.
I wasn't.
And that didn't make that Black woman connection for you, did it?
Nope. Until
Interesting.
I met her, and she saw it in my face. She said, "You didn't think I was Black?" I said, "No." I said, "How did you know?" She said, "Girl, I'm a Black woman. I could tell from your facial
Erica,
expression."
I get this every day of my life. But let me ask you a question. Another one. What was your household money culture like growing up?
Say it again.
What was your household money culture like growing up?
It wasn't discussed.
So it
It
wasn't
was
discussed,
it was
and it
never
wasn't
discussed.
familiar, and it wasn't
It wasn't
comfortable.
familiar. It was just, I have a roof over my head. Somebody's paying the mortgage payments. It was never discussed. It was never discussed in college because everything was paid for. My housing was paid for. School was paid for. A stipend was given to me. And there was never a conversation about savings. Even when my first job at Safeway, I just spent. I thought $80 a week was a lot of money. I'd go get my nails done and my hair done. You get a full set.
So how have you shifted that money culture in a different direction for your daughter than what you grew up with?
Drastically.
Mm.
And more so when the pandemic hit, because it shifted me in terms of, I've out of my 30 plus years of working, I've never had a financial setback like this, where it was like, wait a minute, where's my money coming from?
Mm.
Whoa, wait a minute, how much do I have in savings? Then it became, after the pandemic, the industry never really recovered itself because then it was the strikes. Then that became more aware because it was like, whoa, now I got to live off the savings. Whoa, now I got to dip into my Roth IRA and I'm
Oh,
getting taxed. I'm getting taxed on this. Whoa, maybe I need to rethink these things and slow down. And now my daughter is now getting ready to graduate from high school and she's talking about getting her first job. We got to have a conversation.
excellent.
So the conversation shifted in terms of, because keep in mind, with me working in the industry, she's never seen me in a typical 9 to 5 job like her friends' parents.
Mm.
She's seen me work from home. She's seen me on sets. She's come to me with on set. She's come to me with premieres. So to her, it never felt like that was a job, right? Until she felt it with the pandemic. It was like, okay, we got to scale back. Trips that we've been taking, things that we do on the weekends, not going to happen. You're now a senior in high school. I think you should start applying to look for some jobs. Now that you got your job, I'm going to take you over to Chase Bank. We're going to set you up a high school account.
Exactly.
Now that you have your high school account, I need you to make sure that you're taking $100 out every week, 150 out every week, 150, 100 out, because 100 is going to save, 50 is going to go into your Uber account. Since you don't want to go and get your driver's license and you think that Uber and Lyft is your personal car service, you have to have your own money for that.
I love this. Ooh, I love
So,
this parenting. Woo!
yes.
Talk parenting.
Then
This
after,
is so good. This
so
this is
then,
good. Yes.
because this is a generation that is tap everything,
Yes.
they're not physically touching their money like we did, and we had to count out. You're like, "Ooh, I only got 100 left." No, that's
There's
okay.
only one little piece of paper left in my wallet.
In my wallet, I better pull back,
Mhm.
right? They don't have a sense of that because they're tapping, tapping, tapping. So I said, huh, she still doesn't feel it because she still has a roof over her head. I'm going to start showing her her bank statements when they come in.
Job.
I showed her her bank statements one day and she said, "Oh my God." I said, "Uh-huh. DoorDash, Uber, Lyft, DoorDash, 7-Eleven, DoorDash, I said, "You do realize McDonald's is probably 13 footsteps away from us, literally around the corner. But you would rather DoorDash. So the fish fillet and the fries that you just spent $28 on was really only going to be $11."
How did she react to that?
She said, "Oh." I said, "So you just paid an additional $15 for convenience for somebody to drop something off to you when you could just
So
walk around the
listen,
corner."
you realize you're her Quincy Jones, right? You've just
Yes.
empowered her to make choices, decisions, change the trajectory of her financial future because you educated her and carved out a path that she didn't
Yes.
know she had.
Yes. Yeah. And I did that because what the pandemic and those strikes showed me and taught me, and it was a very hard lesson, was a financial setback and how I was going to reboot. And also, too, in the midst of that pandemic, that was the first year in 2019 that I left all of the production companies that I had worked for, and I said, I'm going to roll the dice on myself. I have my Roth IRA set up. I have a healthy savings. I'm going to roll the dice on myself this for once. I'm always working for somebody else. I'm going to roll the dice. And then pandemic hits. And it scared me because I realized, oh my God, I got to live off this money. And my dad said, I need for you to shift your attitude. And I said, why? I said, because I'm pissed because every month I got to walk over to the bank. The teller started, she's like, oh my God, you're back over here. I'm like, I know, I got to shift money from this account, put this in this account. And she goes, I'm going to need for you to sit down and maybe talk to one of our wealth management planners. And all those years I had worked in the industry, Mele, I was scared because I was like, I don't want to sit down and talk to someone. I feel like I got this under control. And I didn't. And at that moment, I had to shift my financial thinking to say, okay, now as you're shifting and you're getting into your 50s, what's your second life look like? Not professionally, but what does it look like financially? It looked like shit. And it scared me. It scared me. And I had to say, okay, I got to sit down and go through these numbers. I got to sit down and say, theoretically, financially, what works for me? Why this industry is shaky?
Mm-hmm.
What works for me that now I'm heading into my 50s? My daughter's getting ready to head into being her first 21st. You know, I got to set up plans for her in hopes that by 26, at least she's leaving the house. But what if she doesn't? Because this generation, they're not leaving. Because they're not equipped financially. They're not equipped educationally wise. Because I had to remember she had a 2-year setback during the pandemic for high school. She's now learning to financially set herself up. Just what I was saying earlier. I was like, no, you're going to pay for your trip. How? I'm like, guess what? When you get paid, this is what you're going to take out every 2 weeks. This is what you're going to put aside.
It is so important what you're saying, that it comes from the home. Because across many districts and many school systems, it is not an established component of the curriculum. And the way that we feel about money comes from the way that our parents or
We
elders
are
feel about
yes,
money. And the same thing goes with how we take care of ourselves, how we celebrate ourselves.
absolutely.
So, you are highly celebrated in a number of different industries across a number of landscapes.
Mm-hmm.
You are a trailblazer. How do you celebrate you, though? That's what I'm focused on.
I celebrate myself by doing things like this on these type of platforms. You can't sit at home and regurgitate this information by yourself with yourself, because then that's considered mental disorder, right? Or you're a narcissist.
Depends.
And thank God I don't have a mental
Depends
disorder.
who's asking.
And I'm not a narcissist, but it feels good to be able to exchange healthy conversation, because what it does, it reminds me when you're in a situation to celebrate yourself. It's weird because I don't until I do things like this, or an article in Essence comes out and it's almost like the mirror gets reversed. And so you're reading about yourself and it makes me proud that I was this little girl from Seattle, Washington, that had a school teacher, Miss Candy, that saw my light, that poured into me, that made me go, oh, for real? Okay. To like, hey, mom, I want to go with you to your Avon meetings, because I was fascinated by women and seeing them be empowered and pull off in their cars, or pull off, or pull up to their brunches and watch these women in beautiful suits and hair coiffed, pretty lipstick, and looking at these faces and going, I see myself in all of these women. This is what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be in this type of environment. To having men support my career, to being on panels, and even being an advocate of being volunteers at some of these programs for young Black girls, and having girls come to me and going, I didn't even know those positions were available. I didn't know that I could be that. You're so cool. Thank you for the information. I still have a young girl that calls me and goes, I know I bother you. And I'm like, sometimes you do, but what's up? She said, you're such a, like, Erica, you're such a G. You so real. Cause I know I get on your nerves. I just be calling you and she does. It'll be like, I said, why are you calling me at 12:50 in the morning? Cause I was up and an ideal came to me. I said, I'm gonna call her and see if she likes this ideal. But I have to remind myself, Quincy did it for me. John did it for me. And I want to be a vessel to that girl. And sometimes when she calls, it's because she's in a place where she is so unsure, not just about her industry she's in, unsure about herself. And I hear her shrink and shrink and shrink. And she's so honest and vulnerable with me. She's like, sometimes I just want to just drink this away, or I just want to go to the dispensary and I want to smoke it away. And I'm like, and then what after you smoke it away?
Right, it's still there.
Then what? Because it's still going to be there. You right, you right. And I said, well, you don't live that far from me. Me and my daughter going bike riding. You should just come bike riding with us. Meet us at the beach. We'll go biking. I'll rent her a bike. You know what I mean? So it's just, so I celebrate myself in that way too.
You celebrate yourself through other Black women and enjoying the reflection of everything that you've accomplished in the success of others. I think that that's beautiful, and it kind of makes me want to cry because I get to help you celebrate you. You know, that note that I wrote to you about impacting the world, whether you realize it or not.
Yeah.
Thank you for reading that in front of me, so I got to be a part of your response. The world sees you in a number of ways. Essence calls you the next best. I love Essence, but I'm just going to tell them that they're wrong. You're not the next best anything. You have always been the number one.
Thank you.
Erika Conner. So I just have to ask you, that's what the world sees. That's what they see, they want, they expect. Who do you know that you are?
I know that I'm a phenomenal storyteller of women's voices, of the culture. I know this was all designed for me to be here. It's not a coincidence. I know that I am a key to unlock a lot of opportunities for other women to flourish because I flourish that way. I don't know a person that feels like I have to be the only one in this space. What a lonely existence, what a selfish way to look at the world. Also know that I'm a child of God, and I think that when God plants those seeds for you, it is your job to go and water those seeds. And I'm also I'm very, 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 very full of gratitude in the space that I've been allowed to be in. I'm also very humble to the point sometimes and when I say crouch, not crouch because I'm insecure, but crouch because I just want everybody to shine. I want to shine amongst the other stars. I don't want to be the only one. And I'm just about the work. I just want the work to speak for itself. I always said, I made an intention after I did Idlewild. I said, I always wanted to be the producer, the content curator that you don't know that you're sitting next to, and to be able to hear somebody talk about my work without them ever knowing that I was in the room. And it happened to me one day with Idlewild, and I just thought it almost brought tears to my eyes. I was like, oh my God, they're talking about the film that I did. And I never once said to the person at the dinner table next to me, like, hey, by the way, I was a producer on that. It felt so good to hear that and know that everything that that person had said was the seeds that I had planted visually for that film. Just one person that I heard got what my vision was. That made me so proud. And it keeps me energized in this business because I have to admit, after the pandemic and these last couple strikes, it was like, I want to divorce the industry. I'm out. But I was emotional every day about it. I was like, why am I crying about it? Why do I feel so emotional? Because I realized, I was like, because that is your God-given gift. You're supposed to be here. There's other ways to create that content, figure it out, which allowed me to pivot into the art space, allowed me to pivot into the podcast space. That opportunity for that podcast space with Most Def's mother, that came from an old executive that found me on LinkedIn. And I almost didn't respond because I don't really access LinkedIn. I was like, nah, this might be, I don't know what this is. This don't feel right.
You're like, I don't trust.
I'm not going to respond. Yeah, it just didn't feel right. I'm not going to respond to this. And then somehow he knew a mutual friend of ours and got my number, texted me and said, hey, I've been trying to get a hold of you on LinkedIn. This is me. I said, oh my God. And we started talking. He goes, hey, the industry is changing. Everything is pivoting. Erika, you have such a powerful voice and great stories. Would you ever explore podcasts? And I said, nah, there's no money in it. It's too tedious. I don't want to do it. And he goes, don't think about the money right now. Think about the power of your voice and your reach. And it shifted me.
Don't think about the money. Think of the power of your voice.
Yeah, the power and the reach, that's more valuable. And it shifted me. And I said, oh, okay. And I said, well, I'd be only interested in doing it if I can do it based around women with voices that are 40 and above, we are being overshadowed. We are not being seen. We're not being heard. And we are still fly and we are still valid. And I would love to do
You.
something centered around that. Yes. And he said,
Thank you.
wow. He goes, I'm totally down for that. And I said, well, there's a rapper whose mother always calls me, and I just think that she has so much valuable information. And I would like to hear women of grace, but particularly mothers of grace that have put their careers on hold for their child, who are now gone on to be these great geniuses, celebrities, and how they plan to shine their light on the world. And I want to do it with Umi. And I didn't know at the time that Umi was sick. She had cancer. She was sick, but it was one of her bucket lists. And most didn't tell me until she passed. He goes, there's a letter that Umi wrote you. I'm going to send to you. And when he sent the letter, it just brought tears to me because I had no idea that that was part of her bucket list, was to do a podcast.
Oh my God.
She said, Erika, when you called me, I said, oh my God, this must be alignment with God and Allah, because they're Muslim. She said, this must be aligned with God and Allah that you reached out to me. And what better perfect person to do it with was with you, because I trusted you and I knew you came from an authentic place. And what it did for me, it reminded me of my power, because when I went through my phone book Rolodex and I started calling the celebrities for their mothers, no one hesitated. When they pick up the phone, they was like, Eric, I'm doing this because it's you. You got class, you have taste. I love your background. I know where you come from. And everybody don't trust you with their mothers.
Hey, but you know what? From day one, you've always been you.
Yeah.
From day one.
Yeah.
And I just want to close out by reminding you. First of all, you just made me feel fly. When you're talking about being over 40, we are still fly. Thank you. Bless you.
Yes, you are.
You know what? It is hard enough being a woman, a Black woman, a leader. And then the moment that you crescendo over that 40 years old, you
Yep.
So that affirmation is incredibly powerful. But to be clear, you are what people wait for after the scene closes. All over those credits.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
You are that.
Yeah,
Everyone
thank
that's
you.
inspired you, you brought it full circle. And I can't even tell you how powerful this moment has been with you.
Thank you.
You
Thank you
don't
for
know
that.
me. You
Thank
didn't have to
you.
do this. You chose to.
Well, I didn't have to, but I
Grateful.
felt it necessary, because again, it's another added voice. And when I missed the opportunity the first time because I responded late, also too, that was a testimony to me to things ain't waiting on you, but then they were, because the opportunity came back and I was like, oh no, there's a purpose here. Because when I went to the link and I looked at the previous shows, and you're so graceful and so aware of the community of Black women and where our voices have landed and where they need to take off. And I said, no, I have to be part. That's why I kept emailing. I'm like, hey, you still doing it? Hey, I want to be part of this.
It means a lot. It means a lot
It
to
means
me.
a
It means a lot to
lot.
people that are listening. It means a
It
lot
means
to
so much to the community of women and Black women, because in this industry, I get called to do panels, and I get on these panels and I look and I'm like, where are the other sisters?
right? Why am I by myself?
Why am I by myself? And I'm surrounded around voices of privilege.
There's different layers of privilege.
Different layers. So when they hear my story, they go, did I get crowded in the room? Because people go, you're so authentic. Oh my God. When did I get? But their response is never, to me, feels like of gratitude. It feels like, oh, oh my God.
For you.
For you. How
I
did you
call
make
that trauma porn.
Yes.
And there is nothing that makes me feel more alone than being the center of trauma porn, when the reality is that your story and my story are the same. They're the same. I, however, have not yet been able to work with John Singleton. I did go down the line. But to be clear, you are brilliant and extraordinary because you're you, not because you're a successful Black woman. There are successful Black women out there
Yes.
who learned many things the hard way, and we do not need to learn it the hard way.
Yeah.
If we could
Well,
all
that's why I
have a
said
little
it's
bit of
just,
you in our lives.
Yeah. Well, that's why I said I think the best advice for people is just to be the authentic you.
Yes.
Because people are following patterns, and patterns only work for so long. Because you don't find your own personal identity. And I see it so much in this industry. And I get oh, I want to be the next this person, or oh, I'm going to follow that path. But then it's like, but where's your identity in that? I remember coming here, and after I left John to go work for his company, Mosaic Media Group, and the guy who interviewed me in their HR department, it was so offensive to me, but I realized, I was like, E, bounce back. You just came back from the UK. Your roots started in New York. Don't let LA box you down, right? And he says to me, you're a little bit of aloof, aren't you?
Okay. You seem just a sip.
Yeah.
Just
Yep.
a sip.
And I
Because it's
said,
about to make me mad. Please continue.
I said, aloof? He goes, yeah. He goes, see, look at your resume. He goes, you just been like everywhere. He goes, you were here for 2 years. Well, it looked like you started at a magazine, for 8 years, and you were here for 2 years, here for 3 years, here for 1 year, 1 year. He goes, it just feels like you're just kind of just like all over the place. And I said, actually, there's beauty in that. And he goes, well, where do you find the beauty in that? I said, it's beauty in that because just like we have 2 legs and you can walk on both legs, I walk in both worlds. I walk on the corporate side, I walk on the corporate executive side, and I walk on the creative side. And I said, what it's allowed me to do is to have this freedom like a bird to be able to fly the coop to my next positions and learn all these things. I've never been the girl that has been at a company for 15 years when a company will never be full of gratitude that you stayed that long. I said, how long have you been at Mosaic Media Group? He goes, oh, I've been here for like 22 years. I said, in HR.
Erika, that conversation alone creates space and a path for a journey that we create and not one that someone else has created for us. So that's the trail that you've carved out and blazed in the jungle and in the chaos.
Yes.
You've carved out that little jogging path and made it something that we feel like we can follow and track along.
Yeah.
This isn't over. I know we need to close out, but I'm just going to say right now, wherever you are in the world, wherever I am in the world, first of all, Seattle's your hometown.
Yes.
You need to come on back. You are welcome. We will figure it out. But I cannot wait to spend more time with you. This is just the beginning.
I would love that. I have a trip planned in June.
Stop. Okay.
I have a planned trip in June. So last March, I curated the Sweet Greens flagship restaurant, which is downtown Seattle on 8th and what street? I can't remember the cross street, but it's on 8th Street downtown.
Okay.
So they opened up a big flagship restaurant, Sweet Greens, and they hired me to come and curate the artwork in there. So what I did is I found this young Black girl out of Tacoma, Washington.
What's her name?
Her name is Deidre. She's Deidre Fearson.
Okay, I'm just surrounded by Black art. Are you familiar with Christina Martinez?
Yep, I see your artwork back there. Yes.
I have an art degree. I'm not even playing with you right now. Listen,
okay,
we need to take this offline. All I'm saying is my home is your home, and we are not done.
Done.
And let's at least close out the show and then keep going.
Yes. Yep.
And I just want to close by saying thank you. Thank you for bringing all of you and not filtering any part out. Not only are you 100% welcome, but you make us all feel welcome.
Wow,
I wish we had met years ago because I needed you, and I feel like there would have been a place for me to support you in your journey.
Awesome. Just thank you again for this platform. Thank you for that title, Who Does She Think She Is? Because it really makes us think about that and remind us of who we are, because I think we forget. You're just constantly on the grind. And just thank you for this platform that is uncensored and allowing us to be our authentic self. And it's not so rigid, it wasn't question. And then a thank you. You allowed me to be very expressive, be very authentic, to share, to laugh, to sip. And I cannot wait to light this candle and use my daily affirmations and to meet you in person. Thank you. Please keep this platform available for us. And any other woman that I could share for you for the platform, I'm happy to do that. So just thank you.
You're the best.
Yeah.
I appreciate you.